guys, so I've been getting a lot of requests about information about my fertilizer spreader. So today I thought I'd walk you through what all this fertilizer spreader can do, as well as the spray tank and how I built that on top. Alright, so what this is a Earthway even spread, and it has the FlexTech trays in it, so they're interchangeable trays. But on top I built this spray rig. It's got a 3-nozzle boom on it with these T-Jet spray nozzles on it. And so I'm going to break that down as well and show you kind of the components that goes into that and just some things to think about if you're going to build one of your own. So I want to walk you through some things to think about if you're going to design one of these for your spreader. So mine's different for a couple of reasons. One, it's a Earthway, and so they don't, at least at the time, they didn't make a tank that's molded that fits inside of this spreader. And so what I ended up with is one of these tanks. It's a North Star tank and pump combo thing from Northern Tool, and these are the type of tanks that are pretty easily available to us out here in West Texas. These are the kind of things that fit on the back of a four-wheeler or on the back of a small tractor, things like that. And so I went ahead and went with this kind of size of a tank. It's a 15-gallon tank, and the reason for that is in the future I have plans to hopefully have some more property, and someday I want to get the Toro triplex, and so I wanted a tank large enough that I could adapt to something like that so that I could spray, you know, enough material at one time and not have to buy another tank or change out a bunch of components, that whole thing. And so I went ahead and went with this tank here and just built it to where it fits on top of it. And so something to think about is anytime you do a tank like this where it's on top or sits down inside of it, before you start drilling all these holes in here and start building all this out, some advice I'd give you is put a couple of gallons of water inside this tank and find the center of gravity point. Because if I had my tank set up right here in the center of the spreader, after I fill it up, the moment I lift up on it, it would just dump over on the ground. And so what I did is I filled it up with some water. I've got some lines marked back here on the back, so that way I always know where my tank needs to sit, so that way everything's balanced. And the other thing that caught me later that luckily it worked out is the weight of your battery. If you're going to have that battery out on the front, that thing's probably 12 or 15 pounds, and so it actually provides a lot of counterweight on the front end that you don't think about when you're building one of these. And so take that into consideration too whenever you're looking for that center of gravity point. That way whenever this thing's loaded up with 8 gallons of water or so, it's not top heavy and doesn't want to tip over on you, or the opposite, it's not all so far back that it's real heavy and a lot of strain on your forearms while you're trying to hold the sprayer up and push it at the same time. So if you can find that happy middle point on one of these, it makes pushing one of these a whole lot easier. And it's just something to think about before you go drilling all these holes in here in the side. Alright, so something you might notice that's kind of strange in this is that the angle aluminum is not at the same angle as the rest of the spreader, and that's on purpose. So the way that this spreader is built by design, it's tilted back a little bit so that when you've got the fertilizer product stacked up in it, when you go lift up on it and push, it won't tip over on you. And so if I would have built this aluminum angle at the same angle as the spreader, what would happen is my spray tips would be fanned out the entire time, and so you won't get even coverage on the ground if that happens. And so what I did is I came back here and factored in my height. So my height and the height that I push this at, you can see now that angle aluminum is now level and my spray tips are perpendicular to the ground. And so that's important because in the T-Jet brochure it says that you want these to not only be spaced out 20 inches apart, but the spray tips need to be 22 inches from the ground to the tip. And the reason for that is these tips spray out in a triangular pattern, and so if the spray nozzles are too low to the ground, you'll get too much overlap on the spray, and if they're too high, then you may not get enough overlap when they spray out and get even coverage. So I factored all this in whenever I built this before I went and drilled all these holes in. So it'd be a good idea to kind of take a look at that for your spreader before you go putting a bunch of holes in it. So something else you want to think about is the width of this thing. So what happened to me is I built this, put it all together, loaded a bunch of product in it, sprayed the backyard. You know, everything's great. This thing's awesome. So then I put some more product in it, took it around to the front, and I got to my gate. Well, my gate is not this wide, and this tank fits through there by about an inch, and that's it. So you might want to check out your gate before you buy any of this. Check the dimensions of the tank and make sure it fits. So what I did is I modified this. I had this where it was bolted on, but I made it to where it can come off of these little pegs right here. So that way, to get to my gate, all I've got to do is put this down in here like that, push it through the gate, and then I'm back in business. Alright, so I'm going to walk you through some of the components here, and don't worry about trying to keep up with all the parts list. I'll put a parts list, link to the parts list in the description. But the biggest thing you want to pay attention to when you buy these products is you want this tank flange right here. This is called an Anti-Vortex tank flange. And so when I built this the first time, I had my intake on this spout here, and I had a hose hanging down to the bottom of the tank, and it was sitting off the bottom by, you know, as little as I could get, thinking that I could suck as much liquid out of there as possible. But what happens is these pumps are so powerful, they create a vortex, so like a tornado funnel, and it will suck air the entire time. So with that anti-vortex tank flange in there, it keeps that tornado from starting and that vortex from happening, and that way you can get as much liquid out of there as possible without it sucking air. So that's a very good component to have in there. So the way that works is you got that tank flange on the bottom, the hose comes up here to the top, and then this comes through an inline strainer, and this is something you don't want to skimp out on. So all it is an inline filter. It's got a little screen in it, and you want to make sure you put one of these on here, because you'll be amazed at how much trash this thing filters out. And these T-jet nozzles, they have a pinhole outlet on them. So if any of that trash gets through this pump and into those jets, well, then they're clogged up and you're stuck. So definitely put this inline filter on there. It's super easy to clean out, and you just wash it out, put it back in, and you're ready to go. So after it goes through that filter, then it comes through this pump, and this pump's a bigger pump. It's a 5.5 gallon per minute pump. They've got, I think, some 3 gallon a minute pumps that are cheaper, but like I mentioned before, I intend on putting this on something larger someday and adding more spray nozzles, so I got the 5.5 gallon pump on here. And so what's neat about this North Star product is this tank and this pump are a combo deal. And so there's a flat space here on this tank with some female threaded holes there to go ahead and mount that pump on there. So factor that in. So whatever you're looking at, whatever tank, you need to have some sort of flat surface on it, or a way to mount this maybe on your spreader or something. Because if this was just a round tank, it would have been very difficult to get that to mount and stay still. So it's neat that it has these rubber shocks, I guess shocks, little anti-vibration shocks, I guess you'd call it, but it keeps that pump from making a whole bunch of noise and rattling all your parts and components. It kind of helps stabilize some of that. So it's really cool that all that kind of fit together the way it does. And so after it leaves the pump, it comes through here to your pressure regulator, and all this is, get to the side so you can see what this does. So this adjusts your pressure that goes out to the nozzles. And so the way that works is the pump puts up the pressure, this puts back pressure against your pump, and so whatever pressure you have set goes out to your nozzles, and the excess liquid that doesn't make its way out then drops into the tank. So this is also how you do the agitation, because you can close this ball valve here that goes out to your spray tips, release the back pressure on the tank, and it'll circulate. So the pump will suck the water from the bottom of the tank flange, brings it up here and dumps it back out the top, so it constantly circulates all your product for you. So that works really well. So once it leaves this pressure regulator and ball valve, good thing to have there, it comes out here to your jets. And this piece here I've added on here is a quick release connect component, and so it just comes apart like this so that you can separate the boom from the sprayer. And I haven't used it a whole lot, but I think it would be great for you guys that are up north that have freezing temperatures that you've got to worry about. This will allow you to take this off and disconnect your boom, and you could store it without, you know, having to take everything apart. So everything can come apart real easily. Or if you had a wider boom and you need to get through a large or a smaller gate, it will allow you to quick connect that back and forth to you know, get your boom on and off really easy. And so once it comes out here, it's just a T out to these nozzles, and there's nothing real fancy about it. There's these clips here that clamp on to some 3/4 inch conduit, and then these nozzles. What's cool about T-Jet, amongst other things that's awesome about them, is these just twist off, so you can change out your jets for different application types. These red ones are air induction nozzles. So what they do is when the water droplet comes out, it actually injects a little pocket of air into it, and that keeps the wind from causing your spray to drift. So it makes the water pocket or the water droplet a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, so it makes it to the ground. So these jets have been really good. I've really liked these. They put out a nice even fan, and out here in West Texas, when the wind's blowing, you know, 12-15 miles an hour all the time, it makes really good use of getting all that spray down where it doesn't blow away. So something else to think about whenever you go to mount your battery, you can see I've got this angle aluminum across here. You can see my battery sits on that. The other thing I added to it was these bungee straps. I've got one over the top and one back around the back side of the battery, and that just keeps it all from bouncing around whenever you're pushing it across the yard. And so that has worked out really well. It's easy to just unconnect these, disconnect those, and remove your battery and charge it. So let me show you a couple of things on the electrical system. So see all these wires on this battery. So what I did is I used these quick connect wires here. So it can only hook up one way, which is positive and negative. And so that allows me to quickly disconnect my battery from all of this, and I'm able to go charge it. So I've got a quick connect here for the battery to hook up. I've got two different lines here, and the reason for that is get one of these battery tender juniors. These things are great for charging the battery, and they keep it you know, charged all the time. It does a trickle charge, so it allows these batteries to last a long time. So this battery is an 18 amp hour battery, and from my experience, this thing will run several hours. I've left it to run and agitate for 30 minutes or longer before, and sprayed my yard, no problem, no sign of anything you know, starting to wear down. So this battery's plenty good. It's a 12 volt battery, but use one of these battery chargers. It too has one of these quick connects so that you can hook up these cables to it. And I've got two different sets of cables on my battery. And so what I have is one dedicated to charging and one dedicated to spray. And these little boxes here are inline fuses. And so on the charging side, I've got a 7.5 amp fuse. And the reason for that is if anything stupid ever happens inside of one of these, it won't overcharge or overamp my battery and blow it up. So there's a fuse in line to protect that. And then here on my spray side, I've got a 20 amp fuse to run the pump and keep everything protected there. That way I don't There's no way this can damage my pump or vice versa if it shorts out because of water or whatever. It protects all the electrical components the best that we can. So these little quick connect wires are great. They're easy to just hook up and you're on your way. And so all my electrical wires, they're just tie wrapped down along the spreader here. And another great thing about those quick connects is I can take this tank and everything off and use this for granular product without having to take any of the wiring off. I just disconnect what I don't need, and the pump and everything, tank and the boom, all come off really quick. And so I've got these wires tie wrapped here. The other thing that I've got on here is a little switch, so that turns your pump on and off. And so, you know, electricity is just, it's a circle, positive and negative is how it works. And so what you basically have, and I'll draw this out for you, is positive battery terminal comes down the wire, then you have a switch in line, so it comes in one side of the switch can open and close, goes out the other side of the switch, continues down the positive line into your pump, goes through the pump, comes out the negative line, and that negative line returns to your battery. So I've got some butt splices here, and that's what's making all that happen. There's another wire in this switch that you have to wire in if you want it to light up, and I like having that light because when I'm spraying late at night I can see what I'm doing, or I can see where the switch is anyway. But all that is just an electrical loop. That's all there is to it. And one thing I want to point out is make sure you get a heavy enough switch. This one is, I think, a motorcycle switch that fits on a handlebar. And the reason I say it's a motorcycle switch, it's for like a headlight, so it can handle a little more current. The first switch I bought was some Chinese thing off Amazon, you know, and it burned up, literally caught fire, burned up, melted. So make sure you've got heavy gauge wire here that can handle the current of that pump. If you have like a 3 gallon a minute pump, it may not be as big a deal, but this particular pump at 5.5 gallons a minute has quite a bit more amperage, and even still all this wiring gets pretty hot and it really needs some heavier gauge wire on it. But for the little amount of spraying I do, it works out okay. And so another thing I built in here is I had some angle iron and some flat iron bar here, some flat bar, and I built a support piece here for this hopper because the way this Earthway is designed, it's just a plastic bin that's bolted in right here all around the perimeter of this support right here. And so whenever you have this tank on here, the weight of it causes this thing to rock really bad. And so I was afraid that it was going to bust all of this. So I built this support piece underneath here to help support the weight of all of this. And you got to remember that a gallon of water weighs about 8.3 pounds. So on average, I mix up 6 to 8 gallons of water to spray any product on the yard. So at 8 gallons, you're looking at about 65, nearly 70 pounds of liquid that's sitting on top of here. Plus, you have the weight of this tank and the pump and the boom and everything else. That's probably close to another 20 to 30 pounds, which I know that seems crazy. How does it weigh that much? But that pump's a lot heavier than you think it is. Plus, all these components are all pretty high grade, good. They're really good components, and they've got some weight to them. So all this stuff kind of adds up with the weight of the hose and everything. So, you know, you're pushing anywhere from 70 to 90 pounds at any given time. And so that's why it was important to me to have a heavy hopper that could handle some of this stuff. And it's just something to think about whenever you go to build this onto your spreader, to make sure that you can handle the weight. Because most of these, I think are said that they can handle like 80 to 100 pounds of fertilizer or something like that. So I knew I was within the range. So that's why I was real careful about the center of gravity and the amount of weight that all this entails. Because believe me, when you start pushing all this liquid around, it gets heavy. So it's hard to push. So just something to think about, and think about any extra bracing you might need here to kind of help support some of this plastic hopper that you've got here. So I know you guys have seen me do this before, mixing up fertilizer and spraying it out in some other videos, but I'm just going to show you guys again in this video how this works. So you just fill up your tank with water. So you can see that when the pump's running down here, there's no tornado happening because that Anti-Vortex flange there keeps all that from happening. So it sucks all the water in from the sides and keeps that funnel from starting up where it starts sucking air. And then if you go down inside the tank, you can see that the water sucks in from the bottom and comes out the top, and that does your agitation as it circulates that through the tank. So once you fill up the tank with half the water, you'll add your product in, let it start agitating, and whenever you go to fill it up, you want to make sure that you have your tank level, because right now you can see we're sitting actually at about 4 gallons, whereas when it's leaning back it makes you think you're sitting at 6. So just make sure you got your tank level when you fill it up, just to make sure that you're getting the right amount of liquid in with your mix. And so once you have it all filled up, everything's ready to go, just put your lid on and come back over here and set your pressure on the pressure regulator. So all that is you adjust this pressure regulator back here, and you're going to hear the sound of the pump change. So here's my mark here for 30 psi. And so that sound you're hearing is the 30 psi is going out to the nozzles, and what's left of the liquid is actually dropping down inside the tank right now at the top, like I showed you a minute ago. And so once you're ready, you just open up this ball valve and let your spray go. And don't worry, I've just got water in there. I'm not spraying fertilizer on one spot here. So you can see the jets, they all spray evenly. Now you can see it better from over here. I get the light just right. But they spray evenly all across the ground, and that's all there is to it. And so whenever you need to come back your turn, after you made your first pass and you make the turn, just come back here, kill the switch, make your turn it back on, make your second pass. So that's all there is to it. It seems like a big complicated machine, but all it is just a pump with a few other components in line, and it sprays out these nozzles. So that's going to do it for the fertilizer sprayer combo that I've got here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you maybe some ideas of one that you might want to design for yourself. And I actually got this idea originally from Connor Ward, the Lawn Rebel. If you haven't already gone to see his channel, go check it out and subscribe to him. He had a really neat design for his Lesco, and I just kind of took that and modified it for mine to do what I wanted it to be able to do, and it just worked out really great. All the components are really good. And so let me tell you, spraying liquid is a complete game changer to your lawn. You know, with granular products, you've got to throw them out and you've got to wait for them to water in. And your sprinkler system's got to be up to par for it to get watered in. So it just becomes this huge waiting game, where with liquid product, you can not only do fertilizer, you can do pre-emergent, plant growth regulator, any kind of disease prevention, bug stuff, any of those things that you need. And the results are instantaneous because it's foliar absorbed, and so it just makes a huge difference. The applications are more precise, and the results happen a lot quicker, they last longer. And so if you haven't thought about it already, maybe switch to liquid. You'll be happy you did. So, you know, if you guys have questions, drop me a comment. You know, I'll be happy to answer anything you might have. Let me know if there's something I missed. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, subscribe to it. And I think that's going to do it for this one. We'll see you in the next one.